Hey there, this is Jennifer again with Insight Training Solutions, and we're going to make this effort to continue our kind of video diary as we get Insight Training Solutions off the ground over the next couple of months here. So it's been about 3 weeks since we launched the platform. And last week we had our first practice that went live with the patient experience training with their employees, and it was an interesting week. There weren't really any hiccups per se, but some of the assumptions that we had made when we launched, actually getting feedback from doctors and practice managers. It's just been really interesting to get their feedback and to kind of see how things are actually going to happen. And so the way that the platform works is you sign up, we add your employees into the platform, and then they receive an email introducing them to the first modules, the first kind of course, which is the patient experience course. And they log in, and then they are able to take the class, which is only 8 minutes long, and then there's a quick quiz at the end. So they take the class and they can see their scores up against other employees within the practice. And it was really interesting. So for this first client that launched, we thought the gamification was going to be a sticky point, like a good point for, especially for younger employees, because they're used to kind of competing and having a good time and getting digital badges and things of that nature. So for that practice, we immediately got a call asking us to hide all of the points because the employees were having a hard time seeing their points compared to the other employees. And so we thought that was really interesting. Kind of as initial feedback. So we did that and we were able to hide that. It was no big deal at all. And then the practice has been going through the training all week. And for them, what they're doing is they are taking the trainings once a month rather than once a week. So they're taking their trainings and then they're coupling it with some, like a monthly meeting that they have, so that they are able to have a facilitated discussion about the overall patient experience and the role that each employee plays in patient experience at their monthly meeting. And so their 5 modules for the patient experience training will actually last 5 months and will be coupled with other things that they're doing at their practice. So just interesting because we weren't expecting that necessarily when we launched this stuff. So then we've got another practice that is going live next Monday. So I will let you know how that goes as well. There's about 70 employees at that practice. And then we also have we have a large orthopedic practice with 28 providers, 28 physicians, and then some PAs that go along with them. About 300 or so employees, and we are like eyeball deep in helping them go live on their patient experience training. And so what they're doing is they are going to go live and make this happen over the course of 5 weeks. And they're coupling it with some live trainings that are focused on all employees will attend kind of a lunch and learn during the 5-week period where they're going to focus on patient experience training. So we've been working very closely with the trainer that does the live trainings and making sure that we're all on the same page and that everything looks the same. And then for those guys, we've got a handful of contests that we're doing. So we're totally using the gamification part of the training platform to complement and encourage people within the practice. And so the first week with those guys, their employees will receive an email, and then that email, the midweek reminder to take the training for the week will include an incentive where they're going to get kind of like practice swag at the end of the week if they complete the training. And then they're also going to be entered in to win a $100 gift card. And so that's one example of training that we're going to, of a contest that's going to be running alongside the training. And then later in the like week 3 or something, they've got interdepartment competition. So departments will be competing, and what we're going to do is the average score of the person in the department, so that if you're a 10-person department versus a 50-person department, you still are like equal playing field. And so we've got scorecards and leaderboards that we're going to go up in the break room where we'll be keeping track of that stuff. And there's just things going on during the entire patient experience effort. They're actually, they do their employee appreciation during the 5-week period. So they've got a big employee appreciation party. We're doing a survey with the employees, what does patient experience mean to you? And we actually have a mural artist coming in that is going to take over one of their walls at the practice, so that during patient experience week, which is in mid-April, we're actually going to have a wall mural that's 20 by like 30 feet wide, painted with putting the patient kind of in the center. So it's kind of an Instagram selfie wall, but the word art that's going to be all throughout the wall mural itself are actually the thoughts of the employees that are of the practice. So we want to know what patient experience means to them. Then we're going to use kind of those themes that come out of that survey and use it to create a graphical rendition that actually puts the patient in the center. They're also doing name badges. And on their name badges, we're going to have ribbons during patient experience week that are highlighting the training that we're going through. And then they're doing something else that I think is pretty cool. They're doing tokens of appreciation. So we have little like wooden nickels, little nickels that you have the practice logo on them, and little cards. And so every patient that comes into the practice this 1 week is going to be given a card with a token. And then basically it explains to the patient, hey, we're focused on patient experience right now. So it kind of gets the patient into the conversation, but it allows the patient to kind of pay forward any positive experience that they have, so they can actually physically recognize somebody who goes above and beyond from a customer service standpoint. So we're taking that, and we've got a rendition of that that's going to translate over in kind of those departments that don't interact with patients necessarily, so a way that employees can pay it forward with tokens of appreciation too. And all of this is centered around the employee training, the patient experience training through the platform itself. So we're super excited. That one's going to launch, I think, this week. I'm presenting to all of the doctors, and I'm getting the management team on board with this one, and then it launches the week after. So it'll be launched, and we'll come back and have a discussion. I'll tell you how that goes too. So last week I met also with a bunch of doctors in a marketing meeting that started, of course, at 7 a.m. And it was really interesting to hear the physician perspective. So all of the practices so far that have gotten on board with the training have decided that the doctors will be going through the training. I talked to somebody and it was suggested to me that maybe we come up with a second kind of training for the doctors that's a little shorter, but it was interesting. So we were going to take the 8-minute kind of final module and just allow the doctors just to take the 8-minute one. But then I was talking to the docs at this meeting, and they want to take the exact same thing that all the employees are taking. And so we've been working on getting the doctors I'll get them on board this Wednesday night. I've got to meet with them all, get them on board for this practice, but then trying to find ways to bring the doctors, and when they take the training, to bring that front and center, whether it's getting it on the newsletter, we do an employee newsletter for one practice, or getting it on the intranet, or using social media. But we want people to know that this is coming from the top. Not so much the top as in it's being pushed down, but that everybody at the top is also taking the training. And so that's going to be interesting to see how that kind of unfolds, and which doctors will take it and which ones won't, because we all know how that is. And some of the feedback that we got from the physicians, which it was great feedback because it forced us to start looking at how we're going to communicate the training platform to others. But the doctors want to know how they're going to measure these kinds of training. And so it's true, like if you're going to invest in patient experience training for your practice and for your employees and for your physicians, if you do this all, whether it's 5 weeks or 5 months, at 12 months from now, how are you going to know if this actually worked or didn't work? And so we've put a lot of focus this past week on how we're going to measure the success or failure of these particular trainings, and then making sure that there's an ongoing process in place. So there's 2 areas right off the bat that we know that we can measure. One is we already measure reputation scores within the practices. So if you have a practice, let's say, and you decide you want to try to do some training with your employees, let's look at the areas that you already know that you can measure. So we already measure the star ratings that we get, whether you have 2 stars or 5 stars across your practice. This is an easy measurable number of reviews that you've got, the average across those reviews, if you have an A, B, or C rating, and whether it's 3, 4, or 5 rating, that's something we can track. I know for one practice that we work with, we try to stay above 85% on positive ratings each month. We track every positive and every negative that comes in. Last month we had a 90. The month before we had an 87%. That is a number that I can track in relation to the patient experience training or the engagement training. Another area, and I've fibbed, I have 3 areas that we can measure. Another area that we're measuring is coming up with a net promoter score for the practice. And so we're starting on day 1, understanding, asking our employees a handful of questions. And then, day 30, we ask them the same question. Day 45, we ask them the same question. Day 60, day 90, whatever the interval is. And those questions, we rate it, on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to refer us to a friend? Or how likely are you to refer somebody here for employment? What we're trying to do is come up with a base number, a net promoter score number that we can measure against for our employees and for our potential patients, because then we can look at if the training that we're doing is actually translating to a positive result. And so that's another way that we're able to measure whether or not this training is working. And then kind of the third way that we measure it, it's not so much patient focused, but it's very employee focused. If you watched last week's video blog, you know that one of the reasons that we started this initiative is because our medical practice clients are seeing a lot of turnover. And you can measure that number of turnover and that overall employee satisfaction based on, you can measure this training against that number in terms of turnover. If you invest X, can you expect Y? And these are great numbers. And so the doctors were really focused on how we're going to measure this stuff moving forward. And so I think that's something to think about back at your practice as well. Couple of other things that just came up. One in particular, and then I'll close it with this. One thing in particular, so we knew that we were going to launch Insight Training Solutions with 2 trainings right off the bat. We're going to kind of wait and see what the third one is based on feedback that we get. So we're going to launch with patient experience, and that's already done and that's rolling out. And then we've got another set of training talking about generational differences, like communicating across the different generations, whether it's patient communication with baby boomers versus Gen X versus the silver slippers, or whether it's communication within the back office and what's going on. And so we knew we had that going on. And then kind of a phase 2 after we got the trainings up and going was going to be focusing on, from an HR standpoint and an onboarding standpoint for employee manuals. And so the feedback that I got from everybody has been to accelerate the onboarding for new employees. And so, for example, we have a practice that we work with now that has an 87-page employee handbook. And right now, a new employee comes in, and remember, they're experiencing a lot of turnover because the market's so hot. A new employee comes in, has to go through a rigmarole of training just to get up to speed, and then they're asked to sign an 87-page document that kind of says, hey, we know that you haven't read it, but we have to cross our T's off and make sure our I's are dotted and everything, and check the box off that you've signed this and acknowledged you've signed it. So what we've been able to do is take that 87-page document and break it into 5 bite-sized chunks of about 5 to 8 minutes a piece, and follow up with a little quiz, which allows us to really onboard employees in a more systematic way, in a way that will deliver better results. And so I really thought we were going to roll this out like 6 months from now, but it looks as if we're rolling this out sooner rather than later. Actually just delivered that first 5-part training of that 87-page document last Friday. So when I get to the office today, we'll see how that all goes. So with that, it's been a really neat experience these last couple of weeks, but we're getting some fantastic feedback, and that feedback is going to help us go out there and deliver a better product. But I want to create this video diary so that you, as a practice, whether you're a physician or a practice manager or an employee that just happens to be following along, you can take some of these ideas and make them your own and make your practice better as a result. So with that, I'm Jennifer, and I will see you next week.